This video is going to be part 2 of our pond design where we're going to concentrate on the sump and a forebay. Let's quickly review what we did in the last video though. We have created a cell floor and we can see that under surfaces we have a pond bottom. We created our pond berm and those are also representative of pond berm and pond bottom with our sites. So we have grading, which is the blue lines, in the parallel in and outs, and we have more grading, which are the red lines here. We have our feature lines in the center, so here's our pond top feature line, pond bottom, and this one will be our pond water level, which we've also created a pond water level surface. So let's go ahead and start grading in our sump. We'll get our sump done and then we'll concentrate on the forebay. So I'm going to draw another polyline. And I'm going to make it 10 meters by 10 meters. And actually I'm going to use a rectangle so it's perfectly square. Dimensions command 10 by 10, and we're just going to click to place it down. Now we'll have to do a little bit of tweaking for this to get it in the right spot, but for now I'm just going to move it to the midpoint of there and rotate it so it's perpendicular to outside there. So when we're designing our floor, and again I'm just moving it a little bit so gradings don't overlap, we're going to create a feature line from object here. We want to put this one on the pond sump, and let's make this one cyan. So again, keep things separate colors, keep things different. And we want to assign elevations. So we're going to be assigning elevations from our pond bottom. So we want to take the elevations on the floor, find out what the elevations are, and then we can adjust our sump accordingly. Now this insert intermediate grade breakpoints, leave that turned off. If we have that selected every time our feature line crosses a triangle, it's going to place another point on our feature line. So I'm going to click OK, and we now have a cyan colored feature line. I'm going to right click an elevation editor. So I'm going to check out the elevations on this feature line. So right now our two upper corners are 1113.587. Our two bottom corners are 1113.386 and 387. So it's a millimeter off, but that's not a big deal. So in our sump, I want the bottom to be flat and about half a meter below the lowest point. So if we start off with 1113.387 and set our entire feature line to that, and then we'll use the raise lower command here, the raise lower set increment. Make sure to select everything in your feature line window, and I'm just going to drop the entire feature line half a meter. So right now that feature line is 0.5 meters below the lowest point on our floor, which would be about right here for now. And again, we may have to adjust this as we go along. So we have our feature line in there. Going to come up to grading, create grading. Make sure my site name is set up correctly, so pond sump. And we'll have to make a new grading group called pond sump. So we'll click OK. My target surface I want to be my pond bottom. So again, we targeted the pond bottom with the berms. We're going to be targeting the pond bottom with the sump. And I want to grade 3:1 to surface. So we're going to, create grading from this feature line to the outside. Apply to entire length, yes. Cut slope of 3, fill slope of 3. So it should all be grading up at 3:1. And if we object viewer this, you can see there we have the bottom of our sump. Now it's a little bit of ways from the edge here. So I'm just going to take a quick distance, and that's 0.926. I'm going to move my feature line 0.926 closer. And again, if you remember, there's a bit of a Z value in there, so it wasn't quite on there, but we can get this as close as we possibly can. So I'm just going to move that from there to there. And that should align it pretty close. Now that we have our sump in there, I'm going to explode the grading object. So to explode a grading object, select the outside line and just hit X for explode. The reason that I exploded the feature line is so that we can make the sump not have rounded edges. If we try and add in a rounded edge sump into our pond bottom, it's going to distort the shape. And generally, things aren't built with rounded edges. We usually square them off, which is why I created the 90-degree feature line out here. So to do this, make sure your extension OSnap is on. So if you go Object Snap Settings and Extension, and I'm just going to do some line work with a few feature lines here. So I'm just going to draw feature lines along the tangents of these, and I'm just going to extend them out. So where they cross is where the edge of our floor is going to be. And I'm going to do the same to this side. And I'm just using Shift right click to bring up my quick snap menus. And I'm going to extend it past. And I'm going to extend it past. So we have a few extra nodes in here. So right now this is just a 3D polyline. We can hover over these nodes and just hit R to remove them. And we're going to take the last node and snap it to the intersection there. So now our red feature line is snapped out there. Or sorry, red 3D polyline. We're going to do the same to this side. Remove vertex, remove, and snap it to the intersection of those two lines. I'm going to do the same with this side, but where I'm going to snap it to is the edge of the berm here. So extension, we'll remove that, and we're going to snap it right there. And I forgot to remove this one, which we can't. So now we're just remove the other one and snap it back. Now, general rule of thumb, the less number of vertexes on a feature line, the more stable your program is going to be. There's less things to figure out, less items to grade in, less calculations to do. So we have our 3D polyline there. Now, because we exploded the grading object, it's destroyed all the grading aspects from it. So we just have to go ahead and make this a feature line again. So we're going to create feature lines from objects. Remember to place it on the pond sump. Again, I'm going to make it cyan. And this time I want to assign elevations. So when we started snapping those nodes to the ends of those polylines, that has gotten rid of the elevation information from those corners or replaced it with something that is wrong. So we have to reassign the elevations in the four corners. And I'm going to reassign them from the pond bottom. And I'm going to click OK. So if I elevation editor this now, we have our elevations in there. Elevation editor in this, we have our elevation editor or elevations in here. So I'm going to create another surface, and I'm going to call this pond sump. Now, there is a reason we're building these all in pieces, and we're going to paste them together later. If you were to place these pond sump feature lines on your floor surface or in your berm surface, it will mess up your grading. This grading will now try and calculate itself through here, and because these are tied together, it's going to cause a few issues in there. So build everything separately and put them together later. So I'm going to add this to my surface as a break line under my pond sump. So we'll click OK. We'll click OK. So now we have a pond sump in there. There's some extra triangles that we're going to have to delete. So I'm going to close my grading creation tools. I'm going to freeze off my berm layer. Don't really need to see my grading layer at the moment. And all I want to be left with is what I have here. So I'm going to select my surface and go into Edit Surface Style. Under the Display tab, I'm going to turn my triangles on, and again, because my feature lines are cyan, I'm going to make these just a purple color. We're going to be turning these back off pretty quickly, but I need to be able to see them. So if you notice, these ones showed up as well. These are our pond water levels, so you can freeze that surface off as well. So what I'm doing here is, because our feature line, we have it wrapping here, we don't want it to build out here. It's going to cause issues with our surface. So we need to clean things like this up. So under my pond sump, under the definition, under the edits, all I'm going to do is right click and I'm going to delete line. So these delete triangle lines. I just want to delete that outside one, and I'm going to hit enter. So now if you notice I have one more over here as well. Let's get rid of that one. So now my feature line has the same outer extents as my pond, or my sump, sorry. I'm going to go layer previous, and hopefully that doesn't crash on me. Now I'm going to reselect my surface, edit surface style, and we're going to turn off triangles. So we got our sump in, we've designed our floor, we've designed our berm. Let's save this first of all, and then we're going to start pasting these together. Actually, we don't need to do that yet. We can build the next piece off our pond berm. So I'm going to turn on the Sea Surf Pond Berm surface. Which is showing a bit of our floor, but what we're going to do isn't going to make a difference. So we've got our sump in there. Now we're going to design a forebay. So what is an actual forebay? Well, if I go to Google Earth to show you an image of a retention pond just north of the city of Calgary, we notice there is two areas of water here. So we have this area where it looks like the water drains into, and we have the main holding area over here. So water will drain into a forebay. It'll filter some of the contamination out. It will settle all the solids. All the dirt will settle to the bottom, and that won't contaminate the rest of the pond. So we need to provide a little, basically, interim holding area for the water to originally drain into before it gets released into the main pond. So that's what we're going to do here. So if we remember what our pond high water level elevation is, and if you don't remember, you can just turn it back on. C-surf, if I can find it. Pond water level, you can also right click select. Okay, so it already is on. So if we hover, our pond water level is 1,116. Sorry, 116 meters. We're going to make the top of the forebay elevation at that elevation. So to find out where 1,116 is, we can just hover over the surface. And it looks like I picked the feature line. It's right there. 1,000. There's 1,116 is this this contour line right here. So I'm going to start with a polyline. And again, we're just going to make this just a square one. And make sure to grab the same one on the other side. So I'm just going to go perpendicular. So if I properties this, it should be at elevation 1116. Yes. I'm going to offset it 2 meters to the side. And again, these numbers can come from the city of Calgary. I'm not sure of the forebay width, but we're just going to do it 2 meters for now. So what I'm doing is creating a closed polyline, which I will turn into my feature line. So I'm just joining them all together now. So we now have a polyline at elevation 1116. And we might end up moving this depending on how things look, but we're going to create feature lines from objects. So we're going to have to create a new site. We're going to call it our pond forebay. Click OK. And I'm going to make this one magenta, just so we can see things. Our polyline has an elevation on it, so we don't need to add any in. We're going to click OK. So if I elevation editor that now, this is at 1116, which is the same as our high water level. Now we're going to grading, create grading. So make sure to choose your pond forebay. We're going to make a new grading group, pond forebay. And we want 3:1 to surface. But the surface we'll be targeting this time is our pond berm. And I can probably switch it afterwards and show you why. So we'll click OK. Create grading. So I want to grade this feature line to the outside. And this time I do not want to apply it to the entire length. So I don't want it to wrap around these short little 2 meter sections. So if we notice here, there's a little arrow showing you which way the grading's going. So I want to grade it from the end point here, station and whatever you select, hit enter. And I want to grade it to the end point over here. And sometimes it's a little finicky trying to select the endpoint. Enter. Cut slope of 3:1 and fill slope of 3:1. Now the reason I didn't wrap around the corners, and it looks like I went to the wrong elevation on this side, the wrong contour line, so I'm just going to go perpendicular to here. And I'm going to extend it, which also extends my grading. So we wanted to tie exactly into this contour, which is why we didn't wrap it around the side. We've given it really two conflicting elevations over here. So we want to target from 1116 to 1116, which doesn't really work. And that, again, that can be where we start having problems. Now the reason we targeted our pond berm surface and not the pond floor, just let me quickly switch this. Pond bottom. Is this targets the pond bottom and it doesn't wrap itself up the berm. So we need to have it wrap up the berm so we can close it and clean it nicely. So we're going to do the exact same on the back side. We're going to 3:1 to surface. Sorry. Create grading. Again from this purple feature line to the left side. Now it doesn't ask us if we want to apply it to the entire length because we've already applied it to the part of it. So we're going to apply it from the end here, station 0, to the other end of our feature line here, station 83. Slopes of 3:1, 3:1, and there we go. We have our forebay drawn in. So if we object viewer this, we have a 3D forebay. As soon as we create a surface for it, which we're going to do right now, so create a new surface. Pond forebay. We'll click OK. We're going to select all three of these objects. Right click, add to surface as a break line, our pond forebay. So again, we can object viewer this surface here, and we can see that it matches what we have for grading. And I'm going to save this now. And give it a minute here. So let me turn all the layers on. And now we see we have here our almost completed pond. So if I select everything in here, including this one point, which I can get rid of, we'll go to properties. We now have 4 surfaces, 11 feature lines, and 4 grading objects, basically all in the same vicinity of each other. For all intents and purposes, they are on top of each other. They can cause problems. So this is why we need proper sites. Yes, I have a few sites now. I got a berm, a bottom, a forebay, a sump, and a high water level site, but these help keep things separate. So now, if I were to take every object and put it on the same site, it would probably corrupt my drawing, and I'm not going to try it. But we have our, like I said before, our almost completely designed pond. So let's finish this off. Let's add all the pieces together so it's one consistent object. So we're going to make another surface. I'm going to name it Complete Pond Design. So this is where we're going to start putting every piece we've created together. So under the Complete Pond Design, under Definition, we're going to right click on Edits, and we're going to paste in surfaces. So there is an order when we're pasting in surfaces that every surface you put in after the first one will overwrite what's underneath of it. So if we started off with our pond sump and then pasted in our pond floor, the sump is going to go away. So there is a hierarchy. So start outside and work your way in. So we're going to start with our pond berm. We don't need to add in the floor since the berm is taking care of that. And as soon as you click OK, you see here. So if we object viewer this, we notice there's the pond floor with the pond berm. Now let me exaggerate that a little bit. So if you go into Edit Surface Style, Contours, 3D Geometry, exaggerate, we'll go 2.5. Triangles will exaggerate as well. Is 2.5, just so things are a little easier to see. So if I object viewer that now, so we have a little bit more definition. So here's our pond with just the berm. The next surface we're going to paste in is our forebay. Or the sump, either one, doesn't matter. And as you see here, the surface definition is updated. So now if we object viewer this, there's our pond, there's our forebay, and lastly, let's add in our pond sump. So we're going to object viewer this now. So all these pieces, again, are built on different sites, built out of different surfaces, but at the end, and only at the very end, we bring them together. So this will be our completed pond. And again, let's just quickly check volumes. Adding in this and this probably had a little bit of an effect in there. But if we go report surface volumes, we're going to start with our complete pond design now. And we want to compare it to our pond water level. So yeah, we've lost about 500 cubic meters. So again, we could lower the floor a little bit. We could do a few different things, but as long as you're within pretty close to 10,000 cubic meters, and again, if the high water level rose just a little bit, that would take care of the extra 500 cubic meters. So again, that is, again, in my opinion, the proper way to do grading. Keep things separately. If you wanted to, at the end, you could explode all your grading objects and just create one surface out of a bunch of feature lines, but then you're going to have to do some trimming and cutting and pasting things together. And then also, my opinion, when you're done with your grading objects, explode them. Yes, they'll remove it from your surface, but you can just turn it back into feature lines and re-add them. for the pure and simple fact that grading objects are the most unstable item in Civil 3D. And again, one little thing, one little missetting, one little missight can have quite a detrimental effect on your pond or your drawing. And I've lost drawings, I've corrupted drawings, I've had to do hundreds of hours of rework due to simple little mistakes. So keep things clean, keep things separate, keep things concise. And that was part 2 of the creation of a pond video.